Tower of Fantasy is an upcoming open-world action RPG where mankind had to leave Earth and migrate to Ada, a lush, inhabitable alien world where a mysterious energy called Omnium was discovered. But unfortunately, in an effort to harness that power, mankind instead unleashed a catastrophic disaster upon their new homeworld. Welcome back to the channel, everyone. I'm Vulkan, and I was recently invited to play a closed test client of the game, and I really enjoyed my time with it. So I wanted to put together a new player guide for those interested in learning more about Tower of Fantasy. So one last thing before we start, I just want to put it out there, this is not a review of the game. This is not an impressions of the game because I simply haven't had enough time to truly judge the game. And I'm not allowed to show some things because they're still under development. So this is more geared towards providing information of Tower of Fantasy and what it offers players. All right, guys, let's go ahead and get to it. The world of Ada is pretty varied from my experience so far. You begin on a small island named Asta to learn the ropes and all of the core gameplay elements. Here you can clear camps of enemies, take on training scenarios, clear mysterious ruins, challenge mini-bosses, and find all kinds of treasure in the form of chests and supply pods. Now throughout the zones, you're going to see a variety of icons on the map. You have camps, which are hot spots for enemies and potentially mini-bosses. Now these do respawn pretty quickly, so you can always run back and farm them if you want to, but the rewards aren't exactly great. Now this large complex icon here is for world bosses. Here we have Apophis. Now this is the first one I saw. He was about 7 levels higher than I was at the time, and let's just say it did not go over well. But defeating these world bosses has a chance to drop some really cool loot and upgrade materials. Then you have orbs. Now these are supply pods that contain useful materials and currency. These are sometimes locked away behind certain requirements like needing a fire element weapon to burn away thorns or using a relic skill to blast away rocks, that way you can access the pod. Then you have these structures here which are called ruins. Now think of these like dungeons. These can be completed very quickly. They offer a few trash mobs, a boss to fight, sometimes a puzzle, and they give rewards for your first clear and then limited rewards after that. Next up are space rifts. Now these are fast travel points that allow you to travel quickly across the whole world of Tower of Fantasy. And lastly, we have these chamber looking icons, which are training facilities. You can complete these for training points, which can then be used in the store for materials. Now the last thing you're going to see are iron chests and password chests. Now these aren't exactly displayed on the map, but they're still good to keep an eye out for. Now the iron chests are basic. You click them, you take everything inside, it's very simple. But the password chests are encrypted, and because of that, you need to choose to spend a cipher, which will consume a key, but give you increased rewards, or you can do force a decipher, which will then open the chest and give you less rewards. Really, it's just a themed approach as to whether you want to spend a key or not. From my experience, I haven't ran into a situation where I wouldn't want to use a key if I had one. So now that we know about all of the things on the map, how do we go about traveling between them? Well, luckily in Tower of Fantasy, you aren't expected to just run everywhere. Instead, you have multiple ways of getting around. We already talked about space rifts and then fast traveling between those, but you can also summon vehicles. This will increase your movement speed, or you can use a jetpack to jump really high or glide across gaps. Now, there are some puzzles in the world that'll require you to use these things to either unlock a chest or maybe get to hard to reach places for special rewards. Now, there is no shortage of things to do in Tower of Fantasy. The game makes sure to fill up your adventure log with a variety of activities to do that span across multiplayer content, solo content, exploration, or even some daily punch card style events to help give experience and materials. Take bounties, for instance. These are a great way to earn experience, gold, cipher keys, upgrade materials, and nuclei, which are used to unlock new weapons. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. Now, you also have rewards for exploring the world and clearing ruins each day. But there are other activities that are more co-op oriented, like joint operations. These will allow you to play with 3 other people and complete tough missions for powerful rewards. However, each time you complete these, you're going to consume vitality, which is the stamina system for the game. You get 180 vitality each day, and each successful run will consume between 30 and 90. Now, these numbers are subject to change, but this is what was present during my playtime. Now, other group activities include dimensional trials, stargates, now neither of which were working for me at the time. And then lastly, we have PvP, which I haven't gotten any information on quite yet, but I know a lot of people are looking forward to it. So as you can see, there are lots of things to do in the game. Now, whether they consume vitality or not, it seems like Tower of Fantasy really wants to keep players busy. Combat in Tower of Fantasy is one of the more appealing aspects of the game. I know it's what caught my eye originally. Now, there are multiple layers as to how this works. So on the surface, combat is as simple as left clicking to unleash like a flurry of basic attacks, right? Spam that left click. But there are other combos tucked away that the game doesn't necessarily tell you about. You can chain together light attacks and heavy attacks to really dish out some serious damage. You can even stun lock enemies so they don't stand a chance because, again, they can't move. Now, to build on that foundation, you also have weapon skills. These are weapon-specific abilities that'll do something. So for instance, the Pummeler infuses all of its attacks with extra frost damage, while the Chakram of the Seas will trap enemies in an arena full of all these little ricocheting chakrams to deal continuous damage. And because you can have 3 weapons at one time, you essentially have 3 skills that you can use. But it's not always wise to completely unload all of your cooldowns, so make sure to think about that before using them. But weapon skills aren't the only way weapons are used. Any weapons that are stored will continue to build energy as long as you're in combat and landing hits. And then once these are full, you can switch to them and unleash a devastating thing called a discharge attack. Now, this will deal lots of damage, and it's different from your weapon skill. This is crucial to understand, so you want to make sure to pick the right discharge attack at the right time for the maximum results. So those are the 3 layers of weapon combat, but we do have a couple other things that we need to chat about. So first is relics. Now, these are an additional skill you get from unlocking an item and equipping that item. So these you can swap out freely, and they range from an AoE force push to a missile barrage. And while they can deal damage, and you should use them to deal damage, they're also tools. So for instance, you can use that missile barrage to blow down weak walls and find secret chests, things like that. Now next up is elemental suppression, aka elemental weakness. So each enemy will have a weakness, and from what I've seen, is kind of tied to enemy type. So for instance, mechanical enemies are strong against normal attacks, but they're really weak against frost. So using frost against them will deal more damage. This is absolutely key for maximizing your damage output against enemies and shortening battles. And lastly is cooking. So why is this related to combat? Well, there are 2 reasons. 1, food can restore health, but it can also restore satiety. Now, this is a special meter that will restore health once you leave combat. Your satiety will decrease in order to restore your health. However, your satiety bar will also slowly reduce over time. So you need to make sure you stay well fed so you recover out of combat. Now, when you cook food, there are 2 different types I've seen so far. Some will restore satiety, while others will restore both health and satiety. So make sure you use the right one in the middle of a fight. You don't want to eat a food that doesn't give you health when you need it most. Now, the other part of cooking is the creation process. You can combine all kinds of different elements and ingredients to make a brand new dish and discover something that might fit your playstyle a little bit better. When it comes to progression in Tower of Fantasy, you have a few systems to pay attention to. First is your Wanderer level. This is going to dictate when new activities become available. Leveling this up is as easy as playing the game. All you got to do is earn experience, which comes pretty quickly. You can fly through levels just super fast at a breakneck pace if you really want to, so this one is pretty simple and to the point. Then you have weapons and upgrades. These will increase your overall combat score, which determines your combat effectiveness and whether you'll be able to actually do those activities that open up. This is where the bulk of your time and materials will go. Now, upgrading weapons is a very simple process, but it's one that takes various materials earned from completing different activities throughout the game. There are no success chances tied to these upgrades either, so you can just gather the requirements, hit upgrade, and you're done. Then every 10 levels, you're going to need to augment your weapon, which has a level requirement and a rare material cost. Now, these are your milestones. Once you get over them, your weapon will take a large leap in stats as well as increase your weapon skills. But guys, that is not all. Weapons can also perform advancements, which will give the weapon a star rating. Now, these star ratings will unlock new passive skills and increase the stats of the weapon. However, these do require fusion cores, which are only found in the weapon store, and we'll talk about that here shortly. Now, the last thing I want to cover for weapons is matrices. Now, these are computer chips that you can equip into your weapons to give extra stat boosts. And if you equipped 3 from the same set, you'll actually unlock a set bonus that's going to help you out quite a bit in combat. This can be something like increasing your crit damage, increasing your volt damage, or causing extra weapon charge per hit. All of these things are going to be crucial for creating a build for your character. Now, in addition to your weapons, relics can also be upgraded to increase their effectiveness. So, for instance, remember that like missile barrage example I gave a little while ago? Well, so you can actually earn materials called shards, and then these can be used to upgrade that relic. So for missile barrage, it'll add even more missiles. And if you keep upgrading it, it's going to increase things like your duration, your damage, and even more missiles. So gathering enough shards is definitely something you should do, especially if you're particularly fond of a certain relic and it's crucial for the way you play. Now, all of this blends together to help define how effective your character is. And just like the activities, Tower of Fantasy gives you quite a few ways to work on your character and help define their playstyle. So the last thing I want to talk about is the weapon store. So throughout the game, you're going to acquire currencies called Gold Nucleus and Black Nucleus. Now, these are special currencies that can be used to pull weapons. You can spend 10 nuclei and get 10 randomly drawn weapons, aka characters, that you can then use. Now, these range from rare to SSR, and depending on how rare they are, the better the stats and passive effects they'll have. Now, we've seen this gacha style system before, and it functions the same here. It's like going and buying a pack of Pokemon cards, right? You spend some money, you get 9 cards out of the pack. Sometimes you get something good, sometimes you get something that you're not too excited about. So you're spending a currency at a chance for something ultra rare. However, there are some pity systems in play here. You have a small chance at pulling an SSR weapon, and for each failed pull, that chance raises until you pull one or until you hit 80 pulls. Once you hit 80 pulls, you are guaranteed to get one. So for an example, I was able to pull an SSR on my 30th pull, and my guarantee meter reset. Now, there are also special banners that'll give you an increased chance at a specific weapon, again, aka character, but they require a different currency. Now, this time, I'm not really sure where to get this special red nucleus currency, so I can't really give you much information here. Now, to add on to this, you will also gain a token each time you pull. These can be gathered over time, and then you can spend them on specific items in the weapon store, including specific SSR weapons themselves. Now, these will give you an alternative chance at getting something new in case your luck is especially bad. So that wraps up this guide, folks. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and hopefully this helped you decide whether or not you want to play the game. For me, I've enjoyed what I've played so far, and we'll be checking back in once the game releases, which, by the way, we aren't 100% confirmed yet, but some folks are saying we could see the game out as early as August 11th. Hopefully that's the case, but either way, I will have a review for you all shortly after launch. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, this has been Vulkan, and I will talk to you guys next time.